This is John Titus of Best Evidence with a public service announcement. I'm at Diversity Harbor on Sunday, April 19th. The announcement is to enjoy your life, that life is for the living, and you better get out and enjoy it now, because the Federal Reserve has some big plans for you, and they are all bad. Over and out. Today we want to look at the Federal Reserve's plan for the economy against the backdrop of the pandemic. The Fed's plan, as you are about to see, is one for complete fascism in the United States, in which bankers make every important material decision. The person who is going to deliver the plan to us is Neel Kashkari here on the right. This is on Face of the Nation. He made an appearance last Sunday, April 12th. I'll get to this dog and pony show in a minute. But first, some background on Kashkari. Kashkari's claim to fame prior to now was in 2008 in the TARP bailout, when he and Hank Paulson fashioned a plan to transfer $700 billion direct from the United States Treasury into the pockets of their Wall Street buddies. That plan never changed. It was hatched on September 15th, and it was implemented on October 3rd. The only thing that changed during the interim was the lies that Kashkari and Paulson told the public in order to secure the passage of that plan, which they eventually did. Now, in connection with those lies and in connection with the whole fraudulent bailout plan hatched by Kashkari, you have to remember that Kashkari and Paulson are both from Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs achieved fame basically in 2010 when it was discovered in Senate hearings by Carl Levin that Goldman Sachs was bragging about lying to its clients and about selling its clients shitty deals. It later came out that Goldman refers to its clients as Muppets and was bragging internally about ripping its clients' faces off. Now, if that's how Goldman Sachs treats its wealthy clients in the good times, in the run-up to the crisis, you can imagine how Goldman Sachs would treat unemployed people, such as yourself, as serfs in a pandemic. And that brings me back to this dog and pony show called Neel Kashkari's appearance on Face the Nation. Now, this might look at first blush like an interview. It is not. In an interview, the interviewer asks a question. The subject provides an answer. The interviewer then asks a follow-up question incorporating information contained in the answer just provided. That is not what's going on here. What is going on here is scripting. It is messaging. It is messaging by two people. On the left, we have a conductor. The conductor's name is Margaret Brennan. She is a professional at the top of her game. On the right is a band member. He is a junior varsity band member. He wasn't particularly good to begin with, and now he has not practiced for 12 years. In a word, he sucks. However, in her capable hands, he manages to look reasonably normal. So let's get right into this and watch the script that Neel Kashkari is here to deliver.
I want to ask you about the jobs crisis right now, because 16 million Americans have filed for unemployment since these restrictions went into place due to the virus. The St. Louis Fed says we could see 47 million Americans losing their jobs. Where is your prediction of a bottom?
Well, we just don't know. I've been listening to your program this morning, Margaret, and we just don't know the path of the virus. That's going to determine how long the shutdown needs to take place and ultimately how many Americans lose their jobs and how quickly we can get them back to work when the economy turns back on. So there are wide ranges of estimates of how wide or how high the unemployment rate is going to go, but it's all driven by the virus and how effective we are and the healthcare system is to catching up and to controlling it.
Okay, Kashkari gets one thing right there and he gets one thing very wrong. The thing he gets right is the we language, because it shows that the Fed is taking ownership of the pandemic. How quickly we can catch up to and control the virus. We don't know the path of the virus, and so on and so forth. Everything is couched in terms of we, meaning we, the Fed. The thing he gets wrong is the actual answer. He blows that. The answer is supposed to be, well, let's back up. The question is, where is your prediction of the bottom for the jobs crisis? The answer is supposed to be at least 18 months. You can take any notion of a V-shaped recovery market and you can flush it down the toilet. It is not going to happen. That is not what Neel Kashkari just said. What he just said is, well, I don't know. Depends on the path of the almighty virus. We just don't know. Wrong answer, Neel. And now Margaret's got to clean up his mess. So watch this. She does this with ruthless efficiency. She doesn't even need to to ask a competent follow-up question.
So these estimates or predictions of a V-shaped economy, that the economy is just going to turn right back on when people go back to work, is overly optimistic.
Okay, if this is a real interview, which it's not, but if it's a real interview, that question is completely incompetent because he just said he doesn't know. He doesn't know where the virus is. He doesn't know when the recovery is going to take foot. He just doesn't know. So her follow-up question, though, should have been, if it's a real interview, well, what do you think? Do you think a V-shaped recovery is possible? She doesn't do that because she recognizes, she knows that Neil flubbed his line, and she knows that he knows he flubbed his line. So she leads him. And the way she leads him is with the snap. And the snap means, no V-shaped recovery, Neil. Got it, scrub? And watch him. Watch him when she does it. I'm going to play it again. But watch when she snaps her fingers. And watch Neil Kashkari's face when he realizes he's been busted out, he got his answer wrong, and now she's bringing him back in, bringing him back onto the reservation.
So these estimates or predictions of a V-shaped economy, that the economy is just going to turn right back on when people go back to work, is overly optimistic.
I think so. You know, it would be wonderful if some new therapy were developed in the next couple months, that people could have confidence to go back to work, that they could get treatment. Then potentially we would have a V-shaped recovery. But barring some healthcare miracle like that, it seems like we're going to have various phases of rolling flare-ups, as we heard from your guest from Washington, different parts of the economy turning back on, maybe turning back off again. This could be a long, hard road that we have ahead of us until we get to either an effective therapy or a vaccine. It's hard for me to see a V-shaped recovery under that scenario.
All right, you got that? Various phases of rolling flare-ups. Honest to God, I wish I knew who wrote this crap. I really do. But some people gobble it up because it sounds complicated, but there's no math. So you can sound really high-tech without actually doing any work. So let's see what Dr. Rolling Flare-Up has to say about the future. Oh, and by the way, where are their masks? I see your mouths less than a foot away from these dirty microphones that are just coated in various phases of rolling saliva from previous guests without ever once being disinfected, I can assure you. Looks like CBS might need to do a little buff job on its messaging. Unless, of course, the real message is freedom and security for us ringleaders and terror and obedience for you trained circus animals, right? I digress. Let's see what Dr. Doolittle has in store for our future.
Because we're looking around the world, as they relax the economic controls, the virus flares back up again. And that makes intuitive sense because so many people have the disease, but they don't show any symptoms. So you don't know who's spreading the disease and who isn't. So we could have these waves of flare-ups, controls, flare-ups, and controls until we actually get a therapy or a vaccine. I think we should all be focusing on an 18-month strategy for our healthcare system and our economy. If it ends up being shorter than that, that's great. We should prepare for the worst-case scenario.
Okay, so there's really two things there. One is the treatment, and two is the duration of the treatment. Let's start with the duration because it's easy. Kashkari says the duration is going to be 18 months, that that's the worst case scenario. Now, if this virus is really as bad as they say it is, query why the worst case scenario is 18 months and not 18 years or 18 decades. But that's really neither here nor there. I think the message is clear. 18 months we're going to be down. It's going to be a long time where we're going to have these various phases of rolling flare-ups, and we need to be cowering in our homes. But the truly horrifying part is the treatment itself. And you have to listen carefully to what he said. He just said, so many people have the disease who aren't showing any symptoms. So you don't know who's spreading and who isn't. And the reason it's horrifying is that completely redefines the disease. He's just reading out the requirement for symptoms, which is what a disease is. Now, in other words, they don't even need to conduct any testing to conclude that you have the disease, and there's nothing you can do about it, because no test can disprove it, because tests simply aren't relevant under his formulation. And he's going to pick up with that in subsequent segments. Watch where he goes with this. This is a very, very dangerous notion, and he's not the only one who's picked up on this. There's other people who are repeating this, but he succinctly formulated it here, and he follows up on it, so let's listen to that.
Your colleague, James Bullard of the St. Louis Fed, was with us last week, and he said that the answer lies fully in technology. It's testing and surveillance, getting people before they walk into their employer to have a test and wear a badge. I mean, is that your guidance here too?
Well, I would love it if that were possible. I've talked to some healthcare experts who say that it's a fantasy that we're going to be able to test tens of millions of people every day, that there simply is not the equipment, there's not the supply chain. I hope they're wrong. That's a real concern. I don't think we should put all of our eggs only in the mass testing basket. We should try to make that work. We should also invest fully in vaccines, fully in therapies, but then I think we're going to need to be smart about how we start to reopen parts of the economy with those who are at lowest risk until that capacity and that testing and those vaccines and therapies come online. I think we need an all-of-the-above approach because we don't know where we're going to have the breakthrough.
Okay, so the Fed's not going to let the economy flatline for 18 months, thank God. They're going to open it back up in dribs and drabs, and they're going to do so based on the notion of good people and bad people. In other words, low-risk people and high-risk people. The important point here is that there's no testing involved at all. It's simply whether you're deemed low risk, then you get to go back to work. Notice that Kashkari leaves out of the equation who actually gets to decide low risk. It's not scientists. Scientists would conduct tests. Someone else gets to decide low risk. Kashkari doesn't say that. But let's go on and see what he has in store for people who are deemed high risk.
You said in the last crisis, the mistake was going sort of too small and being too timid. This time around, is there enough money being thrown at this problem?
I think there is in terms of what the Fed can do. I think our chairman is being very, very aggressive. He's learned from our experience in 2008, and the whole Federal Reserve is being as aggressive as possible. That's the right thing to do. I think Congress is also being very aggressive. But again, it goes back to the progression of the virus. If we're going to have economic distress until we have a vaccine, then it's going to be up to Congress to keep coming back to provide support to the American people. We can't shut down the economy for 18 months, but we need to find ways of getting the people who are healthy, who are at lower risk, back to work, and then providing the assistance to those who are most at risk, who are going to need to be quarantined or isolated for the foreseeable future. That's a real challenge for all of us.
Well, there you have it. Fascism comes to the good old US of A on a Sunday morning TV news program. You are going to be deemed low risk and go back to work, or you are going to be deemed high risk and quarantined or isolated, which means imprisoned if the history books are any guide. But in any case, science has nothing to do with this pandemic. Science involves testing. This is not what this pandemic is about. This pandemic is about control, and it is about fear, and it is about terrorizing you. And it is time for you to start coping with that reality. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.